So let's talk about general information you need to know when you're citing a journal article from an academic journal. Now this is going to be the case whether you're doing APA or MLA or IEEE, whatever formatting style you have. These are all the things you're going to look for, and then in subsequent videos we're going to talk about how to actually cite them in the individual citation style that you need. So let's take a look at some of the most important things that you're going to need when you're doing the citation. The first is the title, and the title you can see is here. This giant long title. A lot of journal articles have much longer titles than just maybe the name of a book like Cognitive Dissonance or something. This particular journal has a very long title, and you need to give the entirety of the title when you're doing the citation. So you can't just cut it off at the third word and say ... or whatever it is. You need the entirety of the title. And then you have the authors who are here. And you'll notice this particular journal article has 6 authors. And depending on the type of citation method you're using, you may or may not have to include them all. Again, please go see subsequent videos. Following that, I'll put this in red because you don't really need it. So this here is the attributions of the authors, and it typically explains where the authors are from and what their degrees are in, whatever it is. And this depends on where it is in the particular journal that we're looking at. In this case, it's Public Library of Science 1, which is a big open access journal, and in this case they put it underneath. And then here is the email addresses of the authors, and typically this is how you add and correspond with the author. So this is almost never needed when you're doing citations. None of this is necessary. The things that are necessary, though, is the name of the journal, and sometimes that's actually quite hard to find in a journal article. In this particular case, the journal's name is PLOS One, or PLOS1, and this is the name of the journal. So if someone is searching for that, they can type in the title of the article and the journal title, and they can find it. There's another way to find it, though, which is the journal's issue number and potentially volume number, and so we're going to see those as well. So you're going to need at least these 3 things. We have the name of the article, the name of the authors, and the name of the journal. And then sometimes hidden in the journal article itself is information about which specific journal edition these papers appear in. So when you think about what happens when you have a lot of publications, some publications even come out monthly, then you say, oh, well, I read that in PLOS One. Well, where did you find it? Which version of PLOS One did you read? Was it, June 2021, or was it something different? So that's when the date of publication is going to matter. And you'll notice in a lot of journal articles, you typically have 3 or 4 different dates. You have the received dates, the accepted dates, and the published dates. This is the date you want, the published date. Received means that the author submitted it for review. When you submit a paper for review, that doesn't mean anything. It might get rejected automatically. The reviewers might think it doesn't have suitable scientific merit. So just because you submitted a paper doesn't mean anything, and so you do not worry about that. The accepted date, sometimes if a paper is not yet published widely, so for example, you've contacted the researcher for more information about their particular research and they send you this paper. So in that particular case, you can cite it using the accepted date if it hasn't been published already in the journal. But for the vast majority of journal articles you're ever going to see, you're going to want to use the published date as the actual date you're putting into your citation. And finally, now we're looking at a couple of other things, and this particular article does not have the second one. The one we're going to show you subsequently will. This here, Public Library of Science 1, and then we have 16 brackets 5. 16, so the thing out of the brackets is called the volume number, and this tells you basically of all of the different years in which this journal has been published, this one is the 16th year, typically is how the volume numbers go. And then 5 is issue number. So for journals that publish maybe multiple times per year, the year might define the volume number. So say it's the 16th year of publication, so the volume number is volume 16. And then the issue number is the number of times it has been published in that volume. So for example, it's going to be the 5th volume. This used to be a lot more relevant when you were dealing with actual physical print journals. You would subscribe to them. You would get a book that is every 4 months or every time a new issue would come out in a particular volume. And so what would end up happening is you would get a new book that contained all the papers together in one place. And so that is where you would say, okay, well, I've ordered the 16th volume of the journal, and you get maybe 12 books, and then someone says, well, in the 5th issue, you'll find my paper. So then you look at the 5th book in that 12-book series, and you pick it out, and you look for the paper. So that's how you would do it. So it's a little bit less relevant now, which means a lot of things that are being published online may not even have an issue number, but a lot of them do have still the volume number. And when you're doing a citation, you typically need to keep that volume number in there. Okay, so let's take a look at another article, and I'll show you how we can see things that are, again, coming in from all of this. So what do we have? Well, we have the title, we have the authors. In this case, we have quite a few authors. It's going to be very rare you'd list all of these authors, so you're probably going to have to use an et al. At some point. Again, please go see subsequent videos. Now, in this particular case, it's quite nice for us. It has been organized in a way that we can see that is like with PLOS One. We have the journal title here, Frontiers in Ecology and Evolution. And we have also the dates, received, accepted, published. Remember, you only care about the published date if it is already a published article. Now, the fun part about citing journal articles is that so many different journals represent their numbers, their issues and volumes in different ways, which is just a lot of fun, especially for new students who don't really understand how a journal article works. Many citation methods allow you only to specify the volume for that reason, because sometimes the numbers you get are not volume and issue number. So I want you to take a look at this journal. It's really, really almost hidden. Frontiers of Ecology and Evolution 664. And so the first number is always going to be the volume number. So that's going to be volume number 6. But what about 64? How could there possibly be 64 editions of this journal being published in a year or in something? Well, it isn't. If you take a look in more depth into this particular article, it says it is article number 64, published in volume 6. You do not include that information in the citation. So if you don't have an edition number, you can always put in the volume only, and that is acceptable for many different citation methods. Finally, this particular article has something called a DOI. This is a unique identifier for a particular document. So if you can imagine what happens if I have a journal that is maybe 20 or 30 or 100 years old, it's very likely that it's going to have a new website at some point in the future. And so if we supply a link to a particular website for a particular journal, and then they change their website, maybe they merge with a different company, whatever it is, you're not going to be able to search that link in your citations anymore after 5, maybe 10 years. The DOI is guaranteed to be the same no matter what. It's a standard that is enforced, and so if you have a particular DOI for an object, it will never change no matter where your journal's website changes to. In many citation methods, when you have a DOI, it must be included. If you omit it, it's not often a big deal depending on what you're looking at, especially if you don't have a DOI for a journal article. Some of them do not. Some of them you have an actual print article, and some of them are old. So let's say you go to a journal article from the 1970s, it's unlikely to have a DOI. So the DOI is an optional thing, but if you have it, you should include it. So for future people looking at your citations, they can use it. So that concludes our discussion of the anatomy of a journal article. And just to summarize, what you need is the title, the authors, the journal name, and then you're also going to need the journal volume. One thing we didn't discuss is page numbers, and the reason for that is because it depends very strongly on the specific journal what happens. So a number of different journals will have a page number in the edition. So for example, you're going to have page 3063 to 3068, for example, and that's going to be a huge page number. Other times there's only going to be the article's page number, so especially if you download a PDF, you're going to have pages maybe 1 to 20, depending on how long the PDF is, no matter where it appears in the journal, and sometimes you just don't get page numbers at all. The general rule of thumb is if the pages are numbered in the journal article, as you can see here, the page is starting at 1, then you should include the page numbers you have on the PDF. If the pages are numbered in some other or strange way, then you should include those as well. An example of a strange way of numbering your pages is some journals will actually have the edition number and then a colon and the page. So it might be, for example, 6:63, and the page number correctly is 6:63, not just 63. So page numbers are a little bit weird, but the rule of thumb you need to follow is whatever the journal article says, however it numbers its pages in the PDF or the physical journal article you have, that's how you need to number the pages when you cite it.